Welcome to your weekly dose of educational, unbiased, and unapologetic business and tax talk. If you're in construction or real estate investing and trying to hammer out the best tax strategies, this show is for you. It's time for Nailed It, the Construction and Real Estate Finances podcast. Let's hammer out financial opportunities and pitfalls with your hosts, Jeremy Bollinger and Ian Grove.
Okay, episode 000, the intro episode. My name is Ian Grove. This is Jeremy Bollinger. And this is just an episode that we're going to explain to you what this podcast is about, some of the topics that we're going to cover, and introduce ourselves. So first off, I'm Ian Grove. I have a background in banking and in sales and financial advising, mainly wealth transfer and exit planning. I work with Jeremy on a day-to-day basis and get to learn a lot about what goes on in his brain about some very specific topics. But he's got the most interesting background. Mine's kind of more generic and boring. So I'll let Jeremy explain his couple decades and working in the CPA world.
Thanks, Ian. My name is Jeremy Bollinger, CPA, CCIFP. What does that mean? I'm a CPA, obviously. I specialize in construction, and that's what the CCIFP means. And don't ask me what the letters mean right now. I couldn't tell you. First 6 years of my career, I was a generalist doing A&A, taxes, and advisory services. A&A is bookkeeping and financial statement audit reviews, compilations. In layman's terms, company needed an independent CPA to tell them that the books were correct in layman's terms so that they could get bonding, insurance, financing, whatever. Obviously, tax is pretty self-explanatory. We did 1040s, 1041s, and then all the business tax returns. And then the fun stuff where I like to spend my time now is all the advisory. Okay, how can we structure transactions to mitigate taxes if that's your goal, which most people it is. I like to tell people, if your sole goal is to mitigate taxes, you're probably missing the point, right? You're probably going to erode wealth in that process. And then the other cool thing and fun thing is working with contractors to help them identify inefficiencies with their business. Okay, let's look at your WIP schedule. What does the WIP schedule tell me? And going from there and having those interesting conversations. I like to teach, train, and educate. At the first firm, I started the training and intern program. And from then on, I was part of the training committee that either was teaching interns or digesting the gap codification or gap changes, IRS changes, and presenting it to people at the firm. And then the fun thing is teaching the clients, because no matter how much I'm going to try and learn your situation, I can't. So if I teach you where the letter of the law is, and then the gray area based on your facts and circumstances, and then what I like to coin the idiot endpoints, all right, you're way too conservative. This is moronic. You're leaving money on the table. On the opposite spectrum, you're being way too aggressive. This is essentially tax fraud or tax evasion. I don't know if anyone's seen the movie Office Space. I know, Ian, you have. Like, we're big movie buffs. I don't want to end up in that kind of prison. And most of my clients don't want to either. That is me in a nutshell, is I'm going to try and educate you on what we're going to do so that you understand it and you can make the decision. The one thing I always hated, and I'm sure, Ian, you hate this too, is you get the financial advisors or the term trusted advisor. And if they're explaining it to you such a high level using codification or whatever technical terms, my eyes glaze over. I'm sure yours do too, right, Ian?
100%.
If I can explain it to you in using an analogy that works best for you, that you can understand it, and we can make an intelligent decision that works best for you, everyone's happy.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be, like in my experience with, and look, one of our first episodes is how to pick your advisor, right? An advisor is such a broad definition. There's legal definitions, there's term of art definitions, but some people want to know how the watch works, and some people just want it to sell friggin' time. And I think reading the client is part of that equation, but getting lost in the weeds, never helpful.
The only thing I'd say on that is and this kind of goes to everything, but if I'm going to venture into something, and maybe this is just me personally, I feel as though I need to have a baseline understanding, because if not, then I might be taken advantage of. And I see this on the real estate realm, is you get all these people that invested in real estate and they don't understand the risks. And any good investor long-term understands risk so that they know their risk to reward ratio. Well, if I don't know to look at the PM, the property manager's statements every single month to see, they tell me I have cash of $10,000 at the end of January. Well, 10,000 cash better show up on the beginning February statement for them. And if it isn't, what happened? And I've seen this. I've seen property managers steal significant amounts of money because the real estate investor doesn't know what to look for.
I think we have a whole episode that we're going to do dedicated just to how people steal money. it's amazing what's seen out there in the space. All right, cool. So a couple things about the podcast and about us. One, we're not perfect. We're just two dudes. Jeremy has dogs. I have kids. They're kind of similar, but they make noise in the background sometimes. We live in a virtual world. We both get to work I sell accounting work. Jeremy does the accounting work. So we have real jobs. And hey, again, two dudes, we will probably occasionally drop F-bombs and, drink a beer on the podcast. So if that offends you, we might not be for you. But if you're down to, listen to some real life stuff, get some knowledge dropped on you about some very, I think, helpful and relevant topics, especially with regard to construction and real estate, this is probably the podcast for you. Crack a beer with us if you'd like. Don't forget to subscribe. We will be pumping these out once a week as long as we're still sane as
walking the earth and allowed to by our decision makers, my wife, your wife.
Yeah, if there's the daily must talk ourselves out of jumping out the window deal, but yeah, so we're shooting for once a week. We're going to keep it as close to 20 minutes as possible. Tax topics tend to get a little bit dry. I don't think that's the case with this. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a business owner of some sort or a real estate investor, most likely in the construction contracting trades, somewhere in their space. Jeremy's worked with handymen all the way up to billion-dollar companies. So I think that there's probably not a lot of topic on here that won't be somewhat relevant. And the first couple of podcasts we'll get into will be kind of more general in a sense. We're going to talk about how to pick an advisor on the next one. We're going to talk about, and then we're going to jump into real estate stuff. So, a couple of generalities, but mostly we're going to try to stick to industry-specific items. We'll also occasionally, hopefully, have a guest on. They could be another accountant. They could be an attorney, financial advisor, maybe a client, who knows. And we'll probably do a fair amount of discrediting on social media and, things like Quora and all the armchair advisors, as I like to call them, armchair consultants. Like, they don't actually have any credentials or credibility, or maybe they're actually doing someone's taxes, but they probably shouldn't be. So we'll talk about that in another episode.
Not that anyone can see the videos right now, but I'm pulling my hair, rolling my eyes. And if you're getting your advice solely from social media, you're probably not doing things correctly. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Well, there's a topic we'll have about calling BS on the socials.
And as a blanket statement, and I know this is in our disclaimer, but we are both advisors of a certain type, and our words can hurt people. None of this should be advice specific to your facts and circumstances. You're always going to need to attach yourself to a professional advisor to have your facts and circumstances deciphered and make sure that any of this may or may not be relevant before you ever attempt to try it at home. So, and none of this is legal, tax, or financial advice. All right. I mean, that kind of covers the 30,000 foot overview of what we're going to be talking about and who we are. Jeremy is a CPA that doesn't like CPAs. I'm a financial advisor that doesn't like financial advisors. So hopefully you get something out of us. We'll see you on the first episode. Peace out.
Thanks, everyone.